My name is Tony Breitbach. I am president of the Alpha Eta Society. I'm a faculty member at St. Louis University. Our secretary, Debbie Dixon from Nova Southeastern University, is here in
Hi,
attendance.
everybody.
If you want, if you want to make Debbie's life easy, if you want to type your name and your institution in the chat, that would be great. It's a great way to introduce yourself to everybody, and also to for Debbie to take attendance. That would be great. Paul Dominguez, our treasurer, is here from Stony Brook University. Welcome, Paul. Paul, I believe since you did the financial report at the previous meeting, you do not need to do it here. So you are a mere spectator at this meeting. So just letting you know that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
And then I'll be saying some words in a little bit, but our past president, Cheryl Gunter from Westchester University, is also in attendance. So
Hello, everyone.
Okay, good. So let's here's the agenda for today. We're going to do our welcome. We're going to just comment a little bit about how our 50th anniversary celebration has been going. We're going to talk about the executive council and the board. We're going to recognize our award recipients, and then we're going to have our 4 research award presenters will be presenting. Jonathan, I see you just popped in. You will be the first of the 4 research presentations, so I will just let you share your slides when it comes time for your presentation. Okay. So obviously this was a great year for our 50th anniversary. A couple of things we did for this year is we developed a new 50th anniversary logo that we've been using all year. And then we also allowed chapters to choose their own Greek chapter names. I was proudly had the chance to be at the St. Louis University Doisy College of Health Sciences Alpha Eta ceremony last night. And thank you, Kathy Kenstra, for the invite. And we're proudly the Delta Chi, standing for Doisy College, Greek letters. So that was pretty great. I encourage you to use those Greek letters. And then we gave every chapter a certificate with the new logo on it, with the 50th anniversary logo and their Greek chapter names. If your chapter does not have an updated certificate, please let us know. I will make you one and I will send it out to you. Okay. Let's see next. Our current executive council is myself. I introduced Cheryl and Debbie and Paul. And then our current board is Ted Bertrand from University of Alabama, Birmingham, Laura Lee Butler from previously Nova Southeastern, but she's now at South University in Orlando. Stacy Jaffe Gropak from Stony Brook, Judith Parker Kent from St. Joe's University, Denise McKinney from Old Dominion, and Jackson Thomas from Medical University of South Carolina. Because of the transitions and everything, we actually had to do a pretty considerable board re-election. So we have quite a few new board members, and then we are replacing Cheryl Gunter is rolling off as the past president and previous president. I don't know, Cheryl, do you want to say a few words as you kind of officially roll off our executive committee? So we absolutely appreciate all of Cheryl's leadership. And she's been a great mentor to me. She's been a great advocate for Alpha Eta. And they have a great chapter at Westchester University. Cheryl, do you want to say any words at all?
It is truly an honor to have been able to serve. Alpha Eta fills a need to honor students and faculty members alike for academic and clinical excellence. And the opportunity to be part of a chapter at a university for the first few years of its existence has been very special. And the opportunity to connect with people from other chapters across the country has been very special as well. So let's continue the spirit of the 50th anniversary celebration and continue to look for ways to promote excellence. We serve a wonderful need, and we do that very well. And I wish everyone the best as we continue to do that.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Thank you very much. We appreciate all your contributions and leadership in the Alpha Eta Society. So I personally am very, very appreciative. So we have 3 board members that are rolling off. Ted, Jackson Thomas, and Lori Butler. Lori, because she switched her university to a university that does not have Alpha Eta, she was not eligible to go for another term. And so we conducted our next election, and we're happy to announce that Stacy Gropak is our next president-elect from Stony Brook University. Anyone who's worked with Stacy on the awards and the research awards and the scholarships realizes that she's made a huge contribution to Alpha Eta, and she's been a great leader. And I'm really excited that she is willing to move forward as the president-elect. So she cannot be here today. She is traveling, but we want to recognize Stacy as our new president-elect of Alpha Eta. So congratulations, Stacy. And we have a new board. We have basically a new board. A decision was made to make the board a bit bigger because I think we got with some new people. We got some new fresh ideas that are coming about some things that we can do. We also had a member survey that gave us some good ideas on what we can do to help better serve our membership. So we decided to go a little bit bigger with the board, which is well within the bylaws. We had 2 people running for a second term, Judith Parker Kent from St. Joseph's University and Denise McKinney. I don't know if any of you are here, please turn on your video. Frank Chuba from Governor's State, Driscoll Duvall from University of Mississippi Medical Center, Douglas Gardenhire from Georgia State University, Samantha Giordano Muga from University of Alabama, Birmingham, Sarah Krzyzanowicz, did I get your name right? Sarah, kind of, sort of?
Close enough, close enough. Krzyzanowicz.
Krzyzanowicz, I'll get it right. Nahemi Noel, who's actually was nominated as an alumna. She's a recent alumna of Nova Southeastern University. And then Elizabeth Swan from Nova Southeastern University. Sarah, do you want to say a few words? Sarah is here on the call. Do you want to say a few words about your, moving into the board here of Alpha Eta?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm really excited about rolling into this position. Since starting at the University of Buffalo, I've gotten really active with our chapter here and have done a lot through being our president for the past 3 years, which I rolled off of. So I think this is a great way to kind of fill that Alpha Eta passion that I have since kind of being part of the organization, and excited to just contribute to the group some more. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it very much. And I think with some of that energy and some of that some of the feedback we got in the member survey, I think we're looking at some things like finding ways for alums to connect, doing webinars, some leadership development, some career development, training and materials. And I think the people that we've added to the board, I think will give us a a good group that can work together and mobilize some of that work. So we're really excited to have you here, and all of the new board members. They were all notified, and their institutions were given a. They were all with a press release that was also included. That we encourage our board members to share it with their marketing people at their university and get the good word out. So congratulations to our new board of Alpha Eta. So now we go to the Alpha Eta Awards. Our first award is the Lee Holder Award for Excellent in Graduate Allied Health Education. And we're proud to announce that our award winner is Andrew Skibsky from the University of Central Florida. So Andrew, can you turn on your video at all? Are you available to do that?
Yep. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah. Hi, how you doing? I'll give you a chance to say a few words about the award.
Yeah, sure. I did my PhD at UCF. I just graduated in the spring, and I'm now an assistant professor at Purdue University Northwest.
Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what areas of scholarship and those kind of things are you interested in?
I'm an athletic trainer by background. I do research looking at sports biomechanics, mainly with golf. And I teach in integrative human health at B&W.
Okay, congratulations, and you're very deserving of the award, and we appreciate the opportunity to support you moving forward. So congratulations, Andrew.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. The next award is the Sidney Rodenberg Memorial Scholastic Award, which is the undergraduate award, and this goes to Anita Gwen. Is she here? Is Anita here? Is she able to attend? I do not see her. She's from University of South Alabama. She was not able to be on the call, but congratulations, Anita. I shared when we were at the ASAP meeting. I shared the materials with the people from the University of South Alabama. Next is the President's Award for Outstanding Chapter. That goes to the Mu Delta Alpha chapter of the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. And the Dean, Kim Hogan-Crumwitty, is here. Do you want to say a few words, Kim?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all first for the award. Our chapter is very active and very proud of our members, our local members here. I want to echo what Cheryl said at the beginning, in that there's really a need, and this fills the need to really highlight and support our excellent students and faculty members. And I can say at MD Anderson, it adds the gravitas that you all have deserved in terms of at commencement with the chords, not only for faculty and then the students coming across, to highlight to other faculty across our institutions and administrators that we recognize excellence, and that there are metrics across our big scan of health professionals, right? And allied health, it's really important. And then also, I would say, as we have search committees for different faculty coming in, if they have this on their CVs, it means something, right? It means that they really are at that top level. And as we see when we look at our alumni and our leaders, many of them we see are members of Alpha Eta and are in that tier for leadership. So again, thank you for the award, and we're just very excited to be recognized for our chapter.
Congratulations. Thank you very much, Kim. And we have a William Marquardt Student Service Award. We did not get any nominations for that. And we encourage, and I'm gonna use this as a plug right now for chapters to submit nominations this spring. We have made a decision to increase the amount of the award. Each of the awards starting in this spring. So there'll be more communication be going out after the first of the year. We definitely do encourage your chapters to submit deserving students for these awards. So thank you all. So now it's time for our research award. So I'm going to go quickly through the names of everybody, and then we'll go back and let Jonathan, and I believe it's Boza Jor from University of Central Florida is one of our research award winners. Evan Callahan from the University of Central Florida. Rebecca Carson from the University of Central Florida. And then Abru Sohail from University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Center. So with no further ado, we will let Jonathan, if you're ready, if you want to turn your video on, and I will unshare my screen and I will let you share yours. Does that sound okay?
That sounds perfect. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, go ahead and share right now.
All right.
And I'm going to spotlight your video there. There we go. Good. Ready when you are.
All right. Excellent. Dr. Anthony, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak a little bit about my research. And again, I just want to confirm that everybody can hear me via Zoom.
Yes, we can. Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. So I know I have 15 minutes, so I just want to present a small portion of my dissertation project entitled Motor Unit Control of Maximal Grip Force Among Older Adults, Reliability, Weakness, and Interventions. And I'll focus more so on the weakness aspect. And before I get started, of course, I want to extend my sincerest appreciations to the particular organizations that allowed my work to be possible. All these organizations outside of the DeLuca Foundation are located in the greater Orlando area. This includes the University of Central Florida Life Group, which has a composite of hundreds of older adults, as well as the Legacy Point Assisted Living Facility, in which they were so gracious enough to offer their setting and facility for me to conduct this research. Just a little bit of background in aging and muscle weakness. The World Health Organization projects that the world population of adults older, or at least 60 years old, that number will double by 2050. And it is projected that 25% of those older adults will be diagnosed with this term called sarcopenia, which is the increased gradual loss of muscle strength and size, and individuals who are diagnosed with sarcopenia have a higher risk of experiencing falls, fractures, and other characteristics related to morbidity. Now, recent research has actually identified that maximal grip force is a key biomarker for healthy aging. Here on the slide, I listed a couple things that maximal grip force is associated with. And actually recently, a longitudinal study done in Europe actually identified maximal grip force as more predictive of all-cause mortality in the older adult population compared to the 5-time sit to stand. So there's something here about this biomarker of maximal grip force that seems to be an indicator of overall healthy aging, especially among older adults. Now, the issue is, well, what makes hand grip strength almighty and all predictive in the older adult population? And there are some individuals actually related in the nervous system space that have projected that, hey, hand grip strength may be a proxy of how well your nervous system is aging. So here in the lab, we actually have tools to identify particular markers of our neuromuscular system. One of those key markers is how well your motor units are activating and how are they responding whenever you actually stress a particular muscle. So we use a technique called surface EMG decomposition. EMG stands for electromyography, and electromyography is essentially just the universal electrical activity that corresponds with muscle activation. And whenever you're able to break down these signals, we're actually able to get a better picture of how individual motor units are acting. And based off of the decomposition steps, we're able to identify key motor unit characteristics and plot them and use very sophisticated regression models to actually see how well these motor units are activating during muscle contractions. And just a brief review, because I know I have 15 minutes, the alpha motor neuron or the lower motor neuron that we're, or at least my project looked to characterize is the lower alpha motor neuron that's located in the spinal cord. And a motor unit is essentially a single motor neuron in all the muscle fibers or cells that it innervates. Now, the size of the motor unit or the motor neuron, motor unit rather, is based off the particular size of the muscle cells in which that individual motor neuron is attached to, or the number of muscle cells that is innervated by that particular motor unit. And when a muscle contracts, motor units are actually recruited in an orderly fashion from smallest to largest. And how often a motor unit fires or activates is usually related to its size in an inverse relationship. So the smaller the motor unit that is identified, typically the higher the firing rate that that motor unit is observed to have. So how often the neuron is firing, and conversely, the larger the motor unit, the slower the firing rate is. So once we have those characteristics, we're actually able to plot each identified motor unit on a graph, and using various models. My project used the linear and the exponential models. We're modeling essentially the same identified motor units, but the variables of the models is what we're interested in. And changes in these variables allow us to infer changes across the active motor unit pool. So of course we use these characteristics in regards to the changes in the model variables to infer upon neuromuscular physiology changes before and after a particular intervention. Now, empirical data has reported diminished neural drive with aging. So again, we're referring to how often particular motor units fire whenever a muscle is asked to contract. Not only do we see diminished neural drive changes between old and young, but we actually see changes or differences rather between weaker older adults and weaker older adults. Non-weak older adults, they typically have higher firing rates, especially as we ask individuals to activate a muscle to near max capacities. And conversely, weaker older adults express a diminished neurodrive or reduced activations of motor units that we're able to identify via our algorithm. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I want to focus more so on the weakness question, and the gaps in knowledge is actually comparing the motor unit firing behavior between weak and non-weak older adults, as that have not been explored in the context of maximal grip strength assessment. And while the firing behavior of the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle, which is one of the main muscles that are implicated during these gripping tasks, will the firing behavior resemble the motor unit characteristics reported by Wages et al. In 2023, in which, again, I kind of showed the results from that investigation. So the purpose of this particular aim of my dissertation work was to actually compare the neural drive, i.e. the firing rates, or globally the motor unit firing behavior in the particular muscle during a maximal grip force assessment between the weak and non-weak older adults. Now, for this research design, we use a cross-sectional analysis, and we included a familiarization, and all of our analysis was completed from data collected from the first testing visit outside of the familiarization. Before we analyzed the data, we did a phenotype classification to objectively identify the the grip strength performance, and this was done during the familiarization visits. And based off of how well these older adults performed in the grip strength test, that allocated their week classification. And these cutoff points were outlined in the Dalzell 2014 consensus examination. The dependent variables of note outside of the model coefficients from our motor unit data included grip force, as well as the motor unit action potential sizes and ranges, which gives us a better indicator again of the size disparity between the groups in regards to motor unit analysis. So for our participants, we were able to bring in 74 older adults with complete data for 69 participants. And we tried our best to include an equal ratio of males and females for each group. Collectively, we had more older females participate than older males. And our final count included 30 males and 39 older females. For the protocol, we asked individuals to complete 3 succinctly different Maxwell grip force assessments. At least 10 minutes of rest were allocated between the assessments. And within each grip force assessment, each assessment actually comprised of 3 5-second Maxwell contractions. And the highest of the 3 contractions was denoted as a best performance for that particular a grip force assessment. And I actually have a video here, so of how the assessment went. As you see, what's novel about this data collection is that synchronize the grip strength performance with the EMG collection, which is very pivotal for standardizing our methods across our participants. Here's our statistical analyses. The overarching picture here in regards to characterizing between group differences in grip force and our variable modeling is we employed linear mix effects models to better account for the individual variation we see in our measures to better compare that between weak and non-weak older adults. And we used a significance level of 0.05. Here is the collective results tables. I want to pay your attention to the p-values here. Of course, us as researchers, whenever we see the asterisks with the bolded nomenclature, that indicates the differences, which is what we want to see. Now, in the grip force, of course, we did observe a notable difference between our non-weak and our weak older adults, around a 15% difference. The individual either circles or triangles you see are actually the individual scores of the included participants. Now, for the y-intercept of our linear model, we did see a significant differences in which we observed the non-weak group achieving higher y-intercept markers compared to the weak older adults. Again, the y-intercepts is indicative of that global neural drive. So in essence here, the non-weak older adults were observed to have a higher neural drive during the Maxwell grip strength assessment. The slope value is more indicative of how the higher threshold motor units are activating in terms of neural drive. Again, we see a difference between non-weak and weak older adults. In the non-weak older adults, we actually saw a more flat slope, which is indicative of higher or larger motor units activating more often. So we saw 18% difference here. Moving on to our exponential modeling, we only saw a 2% difference as a constant rate. So that was actually the only one that was not significantly different between the 2 groups. And lastly, we saw a significant difference here in the decay factor. The decay factor in the slope is more or less synonymous in terms of simplicity, but again, we see a pretty drastic difference there. And I'll be remiss not to show some experimental data in terms of our charts. You can visually see the differences. So both in the males and our female cohorts, you notice we see just different characteristics along with the regression modeling. So what is actually happening? What is this data telling us? And before we get there, I also want to make note of the size differences and ranges we saw between the two groups. Again, we actually saw larger size ranges as well as just more numbers of larger motor units in the non-weak compared to the weak group. So last but not least, and I think this is the practical take-home message, is before testing, we asked the individuals to fill out the IPAC questionnaire, which just essentially gives us a sense of their physical activity habits at least a week leading up to testing. And the only significant differences we saw between the groups was the difference was the amount rather of vigorous activity reported between the weak and non-weak groups. So what this shows is that the non-weak group actually engaged in more vigorous exercise compared to the weak group. And that was the only difference. There was no difference in walking or sedentary time, which is interesting. The IPAC is very lax when it comes to how they define vigorous exercise versus moderate exercise. And here's a nomenclature in which they describe those distinct terms. But the real question is, okay, what's going on? And this is actually my case for motor unit reinnervation among older adults. Piasecki et al. In 2016 proposed this theory actually using EMG decomposition techniques as well as a procedure to identify the number of available motor units. And essentially their work explained that there is increased de-innervation of muscle fibers with age. And this may be due to either loss of the physical spinal neurons with age, or actually just a loss of excitatory synaptic inputs, which actually makes it harder for you to activate higher threshold motor units with age. This de-innervation results in abandoned muscle fibers, and literature actually suggests that your prevalence for the peripheral nervous system to re-innervate those abandoned muscle fibers may be a proxy of how well your nervous system is aging, at least from a neuromuscular perspective. In 2018, the same group actually identified the failure to expand the motor unit size to compensate for either the decline in neurodrive or motor unit numbers, distinguished sarcopenic and non-sarcopenic older adults, which is very interesting. And that essentially aligns with the data here that you see. So to explain this a little further, I'm actually going to use the female example as a way to kind of explain some of these mechanisms. So in the weak older adults, again, we see smaller motor units actually firing slower. This may be due to a lack of reinnervation, again, related to the size. And this is combined with increased loss of motor unit firing rates with age. Now, with the non-weak older adults, we see significantly larger motor units firing relatively faster. And again, with the data, we actually saw an attenuation of firing rate loss whenever we saw ranges that were significantly larger in the non-weak adults compared to the weak adults. Now, we did have some pilot data with younger participants, and we wanted to see how the younger participants will plot on the graph. And the red line actually shows something very interesting. The red line is an example of a young female, and what we see globally is a reduced slope. So again, higher firing rates for those larger motor units. But the range is very similar, at least in our pilot data. We see the ranges very similar to the weak older adults. And selfishly, at least, how I can explain the data is, at least for the younger adults, if there's no need to reinnovate, the sizes may be comparable. This is actually the next initiative that that we will do, that I'm doing here in my postdoc here in Colorado. But needless to say, another point of interest with my dissertation data is the clear differences in vigorous physical activity reported by the weak and non-weak older adults. And recent evidence actually suggests that there's this practical link, again, between how well your peripheral nervous system is reinnervating abandoned muscle fibers and the overall myelination properties of the central nervous system. There's this a synergistic and clear relationship, which essentially informs my next aims, and at the end I'll point on my limitations here. And the current objectives based off my dissertation work is to actually compare the motor unifying behavior during maximal grip strength tasks between old and young individuals. And we actually have enough data to extrapolate particular sex differences and weak classifications between old and young individuals. But I think the key here is establishing reliability for the motor unit sizes we're seeing in older adults, because again, the size may be indicative of peripheral reinnervation, which may be tied to other properties of the central nervous system that may be of interest as we age. And lastly, the goal here is to really get a reliable metric, at least from a neuromuscular perspective, to characterize these properties, to then introduce interventions, both from a CNS and a PNS perspective, to improve the firing behavior in weak older adults. Now, here are the noted limitations. Only 3 of my 69 participants met the objective criteria for weakness, which is why we had to actually impose the median split to do the weak and non-weak classifications. We only reported the peak firing rates of the peak motor unit amplitudes. Again, this relates to the reality that there's multiple variables you can use to plot this data to then get your outcomes. We had more females than males, at least in my project. So I cannot confidently say that sex did not play a factor, which informs my next endeavors into extrapolating these differences from a sex perspective. And again, I note this as a limitation in which true mass contractions was used in my investigation versus more controlled muscle activation schemes. So with that, I'm having or I will have a pretty good time going through the review process just to see how well I was able to capture some of these points. Thanks so much for your attention. And if we have time for questions, I'm more than happy to field them.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was very interesting research. And you are physically in Colorado now? I think you need to unmute yourself. There we go.
Yes, that is correct.
At what university?
Yeah, so I am with the University of Colorado, Denver, and Schultz Medical Campus.
Oh yeah.
Along with the VA that's there. So I'm actually a VA, a geriatric fellow, but I work in the lab at the Schultz Medical Campus.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, congratulations. Is there anyone got a quick question? At all? Oh yeah, Luke Dvorsky, you have a question?
Yeah, JB, that was a great presentation. Congrats on the position and everything. My question is, throughout this data collection, maybe not data collection, methodology, subject recruitment, do you have any barriers or adversity that you face that you would share with maybe a younger researcher or share with other researchers that you overcame that could help others?
Yeah, Luke, great question, and always good to hear from you. here, particularly to my question, I think recruitment is always the important thing, and adding value whenever you do your recruitment pitches is very important. With this work, I didn't have much issues in terms of adding value as to why this work is needed. But for any researcher, especially them starting out, you don't know what you don't know. But oftentimes leaning towards why we're doing this really motivates me, as well as the research participants to participate in the project. So.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for the question, Luke. Jonathan, do you want to unshare your presentation? And thank you all. Thank you very, very much.
I believe I have.
Yeah, let's see. It's still being shared, so let's see. Okay. Oh, we're looking at your screen. You shared your screen. Okay, let's see.
Let me stop.
There we
Okay.
go. We're good. So our next presenter is Evan Callahan from University of Central Florida.
Hi,
Evan,
can you hear me?
you should be able to share your screen real quick here. Let's see. And then I will spotlight your video here. There we go. And I will get rid of me. Good luck.
Thank you. All right. So today I'll be presenting on a study that I completed this past spring, looking at relationships between the movement competency screen, the functional movement screen, and a dance-specific movement screen. I'd also like to thank my co-author and advisor, Dr. Colby Mangum, for just always being supportive. So I'll start off with a quick introduction of some of the importance of looking at injuries in dance. So the injury incidence in dancers has been shown to be between 0.62 and 5.6 injuries per 1,000 hours of dance exposure. This is from a study that looked across different dance styles. So this might be dependent on certain dancers. So from this, dancers are also shown to have a lifetime injury prevalence of between 20 to 84%. Which can contribute to reduced physical health, emotional health, mental health, and financial stability, which might contribute or result from reduced career longevity, as many dancers retire between their early and mid-30s. So the majority of injuries that we see in dancers are due to overuse, which is when dancers are completing a lot of repetitive movements and don't have adequate rest and time to recover, resulting in those overuse injuries. Which is about 72% and higher than what we typically see in traditional sports, ranging from 15 to 63%. So some of the things that we've seen that more traditional settings have introduced in order to help identify injury risk factors as a result of intrinsic injury risks are traditional movement screenings. So these have shown to reduce injuries, enhance performance, and improve quality of life in traditional settings. They're easily adaptable and feasibly applicable in larger groups, as well as practically implemented in both field and clinical settings, so they can be widely applied to a lot of different settings aside from just traditional sports and some military settings that the majority of the research that we've seen has been in. However, they do lack individualization, which might limit injury predictive ability and their application into more specific movements and more specific settings. Looking at some of the application of these traditional movement screenings in dance settings, there are a few studies that are out there looking at the movement competency screen and the functional movement screen. So from what is available, they have seen that the movement competency screen has an injury predictive ability in both ballet and modern populations, and there might be greater application to dance-specific settings due to the repetitive and plyometric nature of the items that are included in the movement competency screen. This is opposed to the functional movement screen that has been shown unable to distinguish between appropriate and excessive flexibility, which is, of course, a large component of a lot of dance-specific movements, and it might not be sensitive enough to identify movement dysfunctions in dance populations. So for those of you that might be less familiar with dance, our concern with the ability to apply traditional movement screenings to dance-specific movements is that technique in dance requires movements that are atypical to traditional biomechanics, as you can see in those graphics there. A lot of the movements that we'll be looking at with our dance-specific movement screen will be specific to ballet as opposed to other styles that you might hear about in dance like jazz or tap, just because it is the foundation of all classical dance forms and requires some of those more specific movements that might require that dance-specific technique. So getting more into those specific demands, so because dancers have to adhere to these very specific demands, you can see in the bottom there, they have turnout or external rotation at the hips, which is ideally 180 degrees and not very natural for most people, as well as end range plantar flexion at the ankle. Again, not the most ideal for most individuals, but they often employ improper technique or movement compensations in order to achieve these types of movements. And improper performance of these movements places abnormal stresses on tendons, muscles, and bones, ultimately resulting in injury. So there is some potential for application of traditional movement screenings in dance. However, there's not a ton of research to support them. So since we have discussed that dancers lacking improper alignment, or sorry, dancers lacking proper alignment have increased susceptibility as a result of those intrinsic risk factors, pre-participation assessments can be used to identify individuals predisposed to injuries, so potential for application of those traditional movements, and functional exercises such as those that we've seen in traditional movement screenings have shown improved function in dancers. However, we are concerned of the lack of specificity that these traditional movement screening items might have for dance-specific movements. So the purpose of this study was to examine relationships between traditional movement screens, which were the functional movement screen and the movement competency screen, and a dance-specific movement screen performance in dancers. So moving into our methodology, to be included in this study, dancers must have at least 3 years of ballet experience, currently practicing ballet technique for at least an hour per week over the past 6 months, and familiar with dance-specific terminology. And they must not have sustained an injury that prevented or limited their dance participation within the past month, and all of our injury data was self-reported. So this study was completed in 2 sessions. The first session was a survey that was completed on participants' own time. They completed consent and then followed up with demographics, dance experience, and their current injury status to establish eligibility criteria. 2 to 3 weeks after their completion of that survey, we brought them in person. We started off with our pre-screening interview to gain some more of their injury history and their dance experience. That was followed by a dance-specific dynamic warm-up that was based on a traditional ballet bar. And then they completed the 3 movement screenings, the functional movement screen, the movement competency screen, and then the dance-specific movement screen. So going through each of those movement screenings, you can see some similarities between the functional movement screen and the movement competency screen. In the functional movement screen, we looked at the deep squat, hurdle step, inline lunge, shoulder mobility, active straight leg raise, trunk stability push-up, and rotary stability. In the MCS, we looked at the squat, lunge and twist, bend and pull, push-up, and single leg squat. And then in the dance-specific movement screen, we looked at the plie, développé, relevé, cambre, arabesque, rond de jambe, turning, and jumping. If you're not familiar with those, I'll highlight the important ones later. For our statistical analysis, we used Shapiro-Wilk to establish normality. We did have non-normal distributions, so we used Spearman's Rho to look at relationships with significance set at 0.05. Moving into our descriptives, we did have a total of 21 participants. All participants were female. We did not exclude males. However, all of our participants that did choose to participate were females. They had an average age of almost 21 years old and almost 15 years of dance experience with an average weekly ballet volume of about 4.5 hours. Sorry, 6.5 hours. Moving into some of our descriptive results for the FMS. To just briefly go over some of the ones that we'll highlight, we did see that their lowest scores were with the push-up followed by the deep squat. And then similarly in the MCS, we also saw that they had the lowest score in the push-up item. However, they did seem to perform better in comparison to the other MCS items on the squat when we compare that to the FMS scores. And then finally, with the dance-specific movement screen, because we did look at different scoring criteria with each of these items, they did have different greatest scores that they could achieve. So we did look at percentages of scores that individuals achieved. They did they did receive the highest scores on the turning and jumping items and the lowest scores on the plie item. Then moving into our relationships, I've highlighted a few of these that we will discuss a little bit more. To go over those, we did see moderate positive relationships between both the FMS squat and FMS push-up with the FMS total score. And then between the FMS and MCS, there was a strong positive relationship between the push-up for both of those movement screens. Looking at our movement competency screen, we did see a moderate positive relationship between the squat and the total score, and a strong positive relationship between the push-up and the total score. And then finally, within the dance-specific movement screening, we saw moderate positive relationships between the développé with the arabesque, rond de jambe, and turning items. So to get a little bit more into those, looking at both the positive relationships between the squat and push-up with both the total scores for the functional movement screen and movement competency screen, we did see that increases in these item scores may contribute to greater total scores and highlighting their overall strength and stability. I also did think that it was interesting to note that just based on observation alone, there were a lot of dancers who might not have been familiar with some of these more traditional movements. So it was likely that those that were familiar and had some sort of an exercise or training background may have just had more familiarity with these two more traditional movements and overall had better performance on these two movement screenings. Our findings with the squat item for both the functional movement screen and movement competency screen are similar to those that have been presented in current research looking at both of these screenings in dancers. We did see that there were differences in that there was no relationship between functional movement screen squatting score and movement competency screen squatting score. However, this is likely a result of differences in their scoring criteria. Moving to the push-up, however, we did see that there were similarities with the push-up. Again, seeing that some dancers might not have had any experience or very limited experience doing push-ups, and there's not a lot of emphasis on upper body training. This may have been contributing to these factors. However, that is just based off of observation alone, and we have not looked at statistics to determine whether or not previous training was significant. And then finally, moving into our dance-specific relationships, we did see that there was a positive relationship between the développé, arabesque, rond de jambe, and turning items. And you can see on the right side that there are quite a few scoring criteria that are similar between those, including torso alignment, maintenance of turnout, and positioning of that gesture leg, which is the leg that is not on the floor. So it is likely that dancers that were able to develop those skills well for one of these items likely were able to apply those skills across multiple of those items. So this brings us to our conclusion that inclusion of dance-specific movement screenings may better reflect demands placed on dancers and provide insight on improved compensations predisposing dancers to injury. We do think that this can be widely applicable across both healthcare providers that might be less familiar with dance-specific movements, however, are familiar with traditional movement screenings, and also shows potential for use in dance settings, whether that be in studios, colleges, kind of just dance settings across the board to help improve access to these movement screenings for individuals who might not have as much access to trained healthcare providers. And that is it. If we have time for questions, great. If not, I'm happy to reach out to other people later.
Evan, excellent job with that. Very interesting topic. I mean, obviously, it's a group that I would say you see quite a few overuse injuries in dancers. Do we have any questions from the group for Evan at all? I have a question. So obviously you have a lot of content specific knowledge. So, um, uh, can you tell us a little bit about, do you have background as a dancer and you know, has that related to kind of this passion for this type of thing?
Yeah, so I actually started dancing when I was 3 and continued dancing up through high school. And then I joined my college dance team at the University of Connecticut. So a lot of dance teams, depending on where you are at the collegiate level, are either part of athletics and they have a ton of resources like healthcare providers, athletic trainers, physicians, all those great things. However, that was not the case at my institution, which resulted in me wanting to go into athletic training in order to help provide care for dancers and kind of expand that access to quality care. But then from athletic training, I did notice that there was some somewhat limited research in the dance specific side of providing healthcare for dancers.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. It's great. It's great how you can use your own personal experience as kind of a catalyst for a
Yeah.
line of scholarship. So where do you plan on going from here?
That's a great question. I just started working on my data collection for my dissertation this semester. So we actually have a survey that's going out to both healthcare providers and dancers. So for healthcare providers, looking at their experiences providing care for dancers, some of the barriers that they face, and kind of how they're trying to accommodate for dancers within their settings. And then for the dancers survey, looking at what's preventing them from reaching out to healthcare providers. We also have an in-person study going on looking at core muscle activation and core muscle thickness using ultrasound during dance-specific movements, and then some relationships to some balance measurements with that.
Okay, that sounds like you have quite a line of study here. So good, congratulations, and wish you well moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Evan. Yep, take care. So the next one is Rebecca. Let's see. Welcome, Rebecca Carson. Guess what? She's from University of Central Florida.
Yes. So,
Quite a bit of interesting doctoral study going on there. So, do you want to share your slides?
yes, I will do that now.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I'm not sure why it's coming up. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Um,
A little green arrow on the bottom.
yeah, I don't know if it's because maybe I need to have it up. I don't know why my PowerPoint is not option as a share.
No, I would just do your screen.
Oh, I see, I see.
And then just do presentation mode. That works best. So just
Okay,
share your screen, and then once you go to presentation mode, you'll pull it up. Yep, there we go.
perfect. Thank you. I apologize about that.
No, don't worry about it.
All right, awesome. So thank you,
I'm a
everyone.
veteran. I'm a veteran of the.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your help. And thank you everyone for being here today. I'm here to talk a little bit about my research, which is this analysis is a part of my dissertation, a very small piece of it. But this analysis looks at past injury history and how that predicts functional movement screen scores in collegiate club ice hockey players. So I know Evan introduced functional movement screen a little bit as well within her study. So mine goes into it as well, the different population that we have and how that past injury history could potentially predict our functional movement screen scores. So let me start. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about injury risk and club sports in general. So for our NCAA sports, there is a lot of research out there and continuous research that is going on about their injury rates. And injury rates, if you're not familiar with how that is calculated, that is for typically we're calculating by 1,000 exposures, where exposures are one contact with a athlete going to practice their sport or go compete their sport. So that is considered one exposure. And then with a total of 1,000 exposures, we're looking at how often those players are getting injured. And general NCAA injury rate currently is about 13.79 injuries per 1,000 exposures. Now, I'm a little bit more interested in our club sport athletes. So those of you that are not familiar with club sport athletes, so these individuals still compete at a college setting within the collegiate recreational center. They are competing and going to different universities within their state, potentially even for national titles, but they are not within the NCAA category. There is very limited research on our club sport injury rates, but what there is so far is we're seeing a little bit more of a trend of a higher injury rate of 15.8 to about 18.3 injuries per 1,000 exposures. And if we're looking at who these students are and what percentage of college students actually participate in these club sports, a recent 2023 survey went out that found about 8.2% of college students are participating in club sports. And how does that have any relationship or comparison to our varsity athletics? And if we're looking at varsity athletics, that's about 5.3% of our college students. So we are seeing a little bit more of a trend of our college students participating in club sports, potentially having a higher injury rate. But from my experience also as an athletic trainer, we are not helping these individuals as much. However, I did want to speak a little bit more of the dynamic demands of ice hockey, since this is looking at our ice hockey athletes. And just like a lot of other sports, there are a lot of unique demands for ice hockey athletes. Like they require their core to provide power for all of their movements on the ice. There is a lot of balance that goes on the ice as well. They have that inevitable risk of injury like most of our athletes are going through. However, there is contact and not contact going on in their sport as well. So these are some very unique athletes and individuals that are going out there and playing their sport that might be at risk of injury. So what I have a question for is how can we identify these injury risks for those individuals playing their sport before they hop out on the ice or on the field that they're playing on? And now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the importance of functional assessments. So for our functional assessments here, we have different ones that look at different movement asymmetries and potentially identify our functional limitations. So for the functional movement screen, there are 7 different tasks that they go through, and these 7 different tasks analyze and scored on a 0 to 3 scale, depending on their quality of movement through that task itself. The functional movement screen specifically of functional assessments has been heavily studied in our trained athletes. It has been used as an injury prediction tool. It has also been used to guide our preventative or rehabilitation programs once we identify those functional limitations and asymmetries from side to side, and help us guide those return to play decisions. The FMS, I did want to just say out there that it has excellent intra and inter-rater reliability while we are assessing and going through our scoring our functional movement screen. So with this too, I wanted to point out there that the FMS has been heavily studied as an injury prediction tool, as in a prospective analysis, that once they have a certain score, that there could be a higher risk of injury for those individuals from their next season once they take this current score. I now have the question is, can we retrospectively look at injury history, so what our athletes come in with, what their injury history already has been, and can we use that to predict their current functional movement screen scores and what they look like currently functionally. So the purpose of my study here was to examine that past injury history and see whether or not that is predictive on their current functional movement screen scores in our club ice hockey athlete population. So this was a descriptive cross-sectional study. I had 26 male club ice hockey athletes at a large Division I university participate. They completed a past injury history questionnaire, and then following completing that history questionnaire, they completed the functional movement screen, and this was all prior to the start of their competitive season. So during this single visit, the past injury history questionnaire was looking at any athletic injury that this person might have sustained throughout their athletic career. This injury history questionnaire was also organized by body parts. So there was the ability to select up to 19 possible injured body parts. And what they would do is they select that body part, and then they would go into detail about their injuries that they've had to that body part in the past. After they completed this injury history questionnaire, they completed the 7 tasks of the functional movement screen. I will say we use the modified scoring system, and those of you that are not familiar with the modified scoring system is that we are considering pain due to an existing injury. So typically when we score functional movement tasks, we are scoring between a 0 to 3, where 3 is the most perfect quality of movement that we're looking for, while 0 indicates that they declared that they had pain during that movement itself. So if someone came in already with some low back pain, let's say they scaled it, they said it was a 3 out of 10 on a pain scale, we would use that to guide whether or not that pain increased during that movement or just stayed the same. And if it stayed the same, that wouldn't be held against them for that 0. So we would only give a 0 more or less if they increased pain during a movement or from what they came in with, or if they had pain in a different injured body part. Anyways, once we were done, I completed a linear regression that was used to predict the functional movement screen scores from frequency of injured body parts, so however many they indicated that they had prior to this functional movement screen, and the significance was set as 0.05. So into our results. Average functional movement screen scores was about a 12, while our average number of injured body parts reported was around 3 for all of our individuals. The number of past injured body parts was a significant predictor for our FMS composite scores, and that explained about almost 25% of the variance in the model. So of the different functional movement screen scores that I had, that was there for that all the athletes had at the end of the functional movement screen, 25% of that variance of those scores could be explained by this model and by their injury history. So looking at the linear line here, we can see on our x-axis our functional movement screen composite scores, and then on our y-axis our total injured body parts. Our functional movement screen scores range from 4 to 18, and you see that those that had the lower scores tended to report higher amount of total injured body parts, and those that tended to have higher composite scores tended to report lower amount of total injured body parts before completing the FMS. So in general, what can we take away from all this is that injury history can play a significant role in an athlete's current functional movement quality. In addition to this, it is likely that a clinician can predict a player's current functional limitations if they know an athlete's injury history. And for myself, who might be working with a lot of different club athletes, I can now prioritize testing functional assessments in my athletes with an extensive injury history. We know that functional assessments are really important for identifying those that might be at risk of injury later on, but can we get an idea of who might be more at risk and who we could be providing these more for to prioritize that testing for them? Yeah, so these are my references. I just want to say thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from the group here? Let's see. Anyone? Oh, Evan clapped for you. So club sports is an interesting, as an athletic trainer myself, I spend a lot of time, with club sports. So what do you think is one of the greatest challenges of working with club sports as compared to varsity, as far as with the delivery of care and those types of things like that?
Yeah, I would say that like the continuous care and making sure that the care is being continuous on a spectrum of like when an injury may happen to when they want to go back on the field. Because for club sports, these athletes, they're not tied to the sport. They aren't bound by any type of contract. They're not checking in with an athletic trainer every single day. As an athletic trainer for club sports, we're really only on the field for game day, and we might not see these athletes again until game day again. And if they're not there for game day because they have an injury and they're no longer going to the games, I might not ever see this person. And there has been countless of times where there had been a very severe injury and this person had to go and be referred somewhere else, and then I no longer had any more contact with them. So having a more established care routine and having direct access to an athletic trainer who has access to who they're seeing and building that trust and relationship early is so important. However, it can be very difficult, especially when you have potentially hundreds, thousands of athletes with very minimal athletic trainers there to take care of all of these people. So trying to make sure you're checking with every single person and knowing who these people are is probably the most difficult aspect. So as an athletic trainer who want to prevent injuries as much as possible, I might not be able to have the time to look at assessments for every single individual, but who can we start out with to try to help prevent injuries first and foremost. So yeah, that's what I would say to
Yeah,
that.
no, that's a challenge, right? That kind of access and follow-up, I think that's an issue. I think also, I think the, the lack of putting people in these high-risk situations and not having that wraparound care services can be really difficult. So, so what do you plan on doing moving forward? Like, what do you want to do with this research moving forward?
Yeah, I am currently interviewing for jobs right now because I'll be finishing up in May, but I really hope to continue to. Part of my research as well was developing injury rates, so going and tracking injuries over time for 5 different club sport teams. Ice hockey was one of them, and I really hope to still continue to establish that research because there is very minimal research that talks about how often these individuals are getting injured, and if we have that data first, we can start bringing that to other stakeholders to why we need athletic trainers in this setting. So that's probably one of my first and foremost. And then also with all this is what can we actually start doing now, regardless of that, of helping these groups of people. And another part of my dissertation also was a prevention, like injury prevention program for them, where we did core training after their practices to hopefully also help prevent and decrease risk of injury over their season too. And hopefully I'll be publishing all that research soon. So I would hope to want to continue a lot of what I'm doing right now and putting it in different scales of club sport and recreational sport population.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent
Yes.
presentation and best wishes on your job search and the work you do moving forward. So thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's me reshare here. We had one more research award winner, Abru Sohail. I do not believe she could make it today. Best wishes there. And hopefully that, I think another deserving award winner. So with no further ado, I wish to thank you all. I do encourage you to look for the Alpha Eta Society on LinkedIn. I actually just posted some graphics from today's presentations on that. So I would encourage you to take a look. And other than that, best wishes as the year goes through. Please share with us highlights of your chapter activities, and look forward some more things coming from the board moving forward. So thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who participated today, and have a great weekend. Okay. Thank you very much.